Well, I think everyone here, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I've been observing Occupy, but I have not been, and I'm not speaking with the human microphone here. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. I haven't been actually directly involved in Occupy, but I've been observing it, and observing it across North America. I just spent 3 days speaking with a militant longshoreman from the West Coast in California who's been involved in the Occupy movement there with the Oakland, Seattle, and Tacoma forces. So sorry, what's his name? Jack Heyman. I think that what we're talking about here today is of course a fundamental point. I think almost all of us would agree that we live under a government that is probably the most arrogant and really disabling of democratic process. I understand your impulses in terms of petitioning. I probably have a very different perspective. Some of this was articulated in the group. I'm very dubious about the possibilities of anything coming out of public inquiries. It doesn't mean you don't pressure them to be done, but we do know that if this is allowed to be discussed only in the parliamentary arena, within the confines of the established political process and the established political parties, the likelihood of much coming out of it is actually very little. We've seen that the Liberal Party has been engaged in its own scandals in the electoral arena. What they did with in the sponsorship endeavors in Quebec to tilt the process in their particular direction. And I would say that even, and this may go against the grain of many in the audience, the NDP, when it was in power in Ontario, did implement the social contract, which I would regard as a fundamental abrogation of democracy in the industrial realm. There is no, political democracy worthy of the name where workers and others who have been engaged in negotiating processes around collective agreements can simply have those disbanded, as the NDP did in 1990. So it seems to me that there's definitely a people's movement that should be developed that pushes the agenda of democracy both in the political arena and in the industrial arena. I mean, we've seen developments in London, Ontario, where they simply closed a plant, a CAW plant, organized plant there, with basically the argument that take it or leave it, a 50% wage cut. And this was a plant that had been sustained by tax concessions from the local civic authority and the municipality. The trade union movement has never been weaker in Canada than it is now. The left has never been weaker than it is now. And I think the Occupy forces on a global scale, because it is a global movement, have the potential to kind of reinfuse a great deal of movement among people against forces which we would all oppose. And that's where I see, regardless of whether we might agree or disagree about petitions and the way one works, that's, I think, what has to be done. On the West Coast, where the Occupy movement, according to the New York Times, is in the vanguard of the Occupy movement, they have linked up with what remains of a powerful trade union movement to actually try to stop union busting. They have actually played an exemplary role in strikes there and in actually challenging union officialdoms to actually move in the interest of their membership. Certainly, I think that's an area that I would like to see things go. I think much can be done to kind of broaden things, to use maybe a petition campaign to broaden it, to make connections. To make connections with a whole series of other groups, so that the Occupy movement actually serves as a spearhead for a wider mobilization. Make connections with unions, make connections with progressive groups and social movements in all kinds of arenas. This, it seems to me, is the way that Harper will be stopped, and a true form of democracy. If people like us can actually be part of creating a new movement of resistance to a whole series of developments, not just the sort of shams that go on in the political arena, of which I agree, the robocalls and, you know, proroguing Parliament. I mean, this is an arrogance, this is a kind of dismissiveness. We're being governed by a collection of individuals who really have no regard for popular rights. And that's the broader project, the much broader project that I think needs to be addressed. And it's a long-term struggle. And again, that's why in looking at Occupy across North America and seeing the young people, the new faces, the fresh voices that have become involved in activism, that to me is the heartening thing. And in some senses, what we face with the Harper government is it's one aspect of a much wider process. So that's where I think you know, the real value of gatherings like this lies. So I do encourage you to keep up work. There will be differences, there will be different approaches, there will be different kind of strategic thrusts, but staying in this fight against basically those people who control, dominate, and have, you know, utilized the economic crisis that we're all in to sort of further their own power and push their own agendas. And we need to begin pushing back because we face probably the worst of times that we've seen in generations. Thank you very much.